I guess we'll go ahead and we'll get going. Hi, everyone. My name is Angela Canella, and I work in diversity management and outreach within the Office of Civil Rights. International Women's Day is a global day which celebrates social, economic, political, cultural achievements of women. The women's program is one of my focus areas. So this year, the theme for International Women's Day for 2021 is Choose to Challenge. Worldwide, people face a variety of challenges, and from those challenges come change. So we can all choose to challenge. Individually, we're responsible for our own thoughts, actions, every day, all day. We all can choose to challenge, and we can call out gender bias and any experiences of inequality. We can also choose to seek out and celebrate women and their achievements. Collectively, we can help to create an inclusive world. OCR is hosting this panel discussion, which is titled Women in the Department of State. This event will help the audience to explore and to better understand women in leadership and their journeys within the Department of State. Unfortunately, we're struggling a little bit to make the Slido platform work. So we're going to have to shift and use the Zoom chat feature. So feel free to type your questions throughout the program within the Zoom chat. However, the questions will be answered at the end of the event. This event will also be recorded, and it will be archived and then also shared on YouTube in OCR's YouTube channel, and it will be sent out through department notices as well when it's ready. Senior HRO Cassandra Hamblin will be facilitating today's event. She will be providing a space for the ambassadors to share their experiences, their journeys, their reflections, their ideas on how to make a more constructive and inclusive world from now on. So I'd like to turn it over to Cassandra. Thank you.
Good morning. Many thanks to the Office of Civil Rights and Angela Canella and Krishna Das for inviting me to moderate this panel. I'm really honored to participate on International Women's Day, and thanks to those of you that are tuning in today or seeing this later. It's really exciting to share International Women's Day around the world. As the moderator, the Office of Civil Rights just wants to remind us of a few ground rules: being open and respectful, listen actively, disagree freely, use I language, don't speak for others, speak for yourself. And most importantly, respect confidentiality. The stories that we share in this safe space should be free to talk about in this space, but not without the permission of others. So a little bit about me. I'm a human resources specialist, and I've worked for the Department of State now for 18 years. I'm currently serving in Ottawa, Canada, as the HRO for the embassy and 7 consulates. Prior to arriving last summer, I served the tri-missions in Rome for 3 years. And before that, more than half my career has been serving in Africa as a regional HR officer. I was based in Gaborone, Pretoria, and Nairobi. As I have chosen to challenge myself personally and professionally during my time at State, I couldn't do it, and I don't think any of us could, without the support and help of our mentors, men and women. For my female role models that have paved the way, I'm eternally grateful. They have helped me find my voice. including my very first supervisor, Marjorie Phillips, a mentor to this day, Ambassador Rebecca Gonzalez, a mentor and friend and former supervisor, and many senior leaders I have served under have helped me find that voice. I realized the other day, though, in 18 years, I have only worked for one career ambassador that was a female, and that was at FSI, Ambassador Ruth Whiteside. And I've only worked for one politically appointed female ambassador, and that was at Tri-Missions Rome, Ambassador Callista Gingrich, ambassador to the Vatican. However, I have served under dozens of fabulous female DCMs, including my current chargé, Catherine Brooker, numerous consul generals, management counselors, department heads, and finally, a shout out to our GTM senior advisor, Connie Dearman, who is currently one of only 3 HRO senior foreign service officers we have at state. She is truly a trailblazer and a mentor to all 91 of us, male and female. The campaign theme, as Angela said, for International Women's Day is Choose to Challenge. As you reflect on your current or past challenges as an employee, we'll explore some of those today as they relate to women at the Department of State. We certainly are also challenged, however, by women's issues in society at large, as those issues influence our lives and our foreign policy efforts. If you wish to learn more about the challenge theme, please log on to the International Women's Day website. The website is in the chat. And they note a challenged world is an alert world. A challenged world is an alert world, and that is something we have certainly learned this year. Choose to challenge to me means knowing when to step forward and lead, and knowing when to step back and let others lead. As an HR professional my whole career, I have looked for leaders who understand that, who want to challenge us, who want to make us better diplomats, better people at work and at home, challenging the status quo to get more women at the table, more women in non-traditional roles, more women in leadership has been a goal in my career for our mission, US Direct Hires, EFM, and LE staff employees. I have not always been successful. I have made mistakes. I have reflected on those. We all need to be introspective as it makes us stronger. I'm going to share one quick personal story before I kick it over to the panel to just show what an impact can be on someone early in their career. It happened in my very first post, 2003 in Kuwait. This typical male-dominated Middle Eastern society was in the middle of a transformational change. Rumored for some time that Kuwait parliamentarians were ready to take a vote on women's right to vote, the advancement of their democratic process was heavily in the spotlight. This would be a huge leap forward for the country. I had the honor to be asked by our political chief at the time, who is now ambassador to Kampala, Natalie Brown, for several nightly diwaniyas, the political discussions. During this time, they were traditionally male only, held in the home of politicians and academics, businessmen, etc. She consciously chose to challenge the status quo and built an all-female group, representing all ages, races, cones, and specialties of the mission, set out to have meaningful discourse on the events of the day, with a mix of men who traditionally had held sacred their time together for those evening events. Our male counterparts questioned the evening, but they didn't block the effort. I remember the fear we had walking into the very first one, that either we would be asked to leave or no one would talk to us. And while there were a few shocked looks, and it took a few minutes to break the ice, we used our Arabic courtesies and our diplomatic prowess to engage amicably with several individuals. I kept our fearless leader out of the corner of my eye and watched her work that room. By the end of each meeting, the conversation was bubbling and no one asked us to leave. To the contrary, many hosts invited us to tea or to share a meal. Hours later, we piled back in the embassy van, not sure how the impact would hold in the days to come. We went to several homes that night and the result was the same. We would soon learn that our conversations were deemed a success, and our diplomats, male and female, continued to have unfettered access to watch the democratic process unfold, guiding from the sidelines. I share this not only because it was a bilateral issue we chose to challenge, but it's an example of how we can engage everyone. The invite to participate was not limited to senior women or white women or Arabic-speaking women or politically coned women. It was for all women. We had office managers and IT specialists and myself and other FAST officers and political and military senior staff and consular line officers and security agents. For one moment, we were just women, women proud of our mission, women proud of Kuwait, and women proud to serve the United States. That's inspired me to this day to look around and invite others over the years and to encourage other section heads to do the same, male and female. We can do more and we can do better. I was grateful to tune in last Friday, February 26th, to our Women in Action Trailblazers conversations and listen to others tell their stories. The presentation included amazing stories of many women of color in the Department of State and national security positions talk about the challenges we still have. But it starts with including, inviting, hiring, promoting, encouraging. Let's listen to more of that today. It's my honor to kick things over to our first panelist today, who has also worked in HR, but is now joining us in the middle of the night from Guam, Ambassador Cantor. Ambassador Cantor is a U.S. ambassador to the Federated States of Micronesia. And I would like to welcome her and ask her to share with us a brief introduction and a bit about her career path and what journey she has been on to self-empowerment. Ambassador Cantor.
Thank you very much, Cassandra, and thanks to the Office of Civil Rights and Angela for organizing this event today. First of all, happy International Women's Day to everyone, and thank you for joining us. As you mentioned, I am currently the U.S. ambassador to the Federated States of Micronesia, a small country in the West Pacific, comprised of 607 islands. I previously worked as the director of the Office of Civil Service Human Resource Management in the Bureau of Human Resources, and also as executive director of the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs and executive director of the Bureau of Counterterrorism. I'm a career member of the Senior Executive Service, so I'm civil service, and I have been working for the federal government for almost 31 years, 15 of those 31 years in the State Department. I've had the opportunity to work at other agencies, and most of them in Washington, D.C., the U.S. Postal Service, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Foreign Agricultural Service, and the Federal Maritime Commission. I'm originally from Puerto Rico. I went to school there, the University of Puerto Rico, where I studied sociology and also earned a master's degree in labor relations at the Inter-American University in Puerto Rico. I'm a member of HECFA, the Hispanic Employee Affinity Group at the Department of State. I was past president and a leadership liaison. And I've worked as a board member of the University of Puerto Rico Alumni Association. I've been in Girl Scouts, Civil Air Patrol, and several other organizations. I currently, I'm gonna share with all of you something that I'm doing in Micronesia that I never thought I would do. I have added to my bio that I'm the host of a radio show, the only radio show in all of the Federated States of Micronesia. It's called American Waves. And what we do is basically highlight American music and news and information from the US Embassy and the US government. So with that, I'll leave you, turn it over to you, back to you, Cassandra. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I am going to ask you one more question. Since you've had a lot of opportunity, both in civil service and now in foreign service overseas with our colleagues around the world, how do you advocate for yourself as a woman and for other women at the State Department?
I have to remember to unmute myself, of course. There are many ways you can advocate for yourself. I think you have to start by, believing in yourself, knowing what you want, deciding what you want. You need to have a strategy, plan a strategy. You should also, be firm and persistent. That's how you advocate for yourself. Now, you ask about, how can you advocate for others at the State Department? something that I've learned is that, especially for other women at the State Department, is that we need to mentor other women. We need to champion and endorse other women. We need to encourage other women. We should pay other women the same, salaries that men receive. Luckily for us, we're in the US government and we do that, but in the private sector, that doesn't happen. We should promote other women. And there's one thing that we also should do, and to advocate for other women, is to educate men. We have to, help men understand that, this is not something that women should be doing for women. We need them as allies. Just last week, speaking of allies, I think it's someone in the Foreign Service, I don't know who did this, and some of you might have seen it. Someone wrote this, how to be a better ally to women at state. And I think it has been circulating around people at the embassy. The women at the embassy were the ones who shared this with me. It has some pretty good information that I would suggest, all of you take a look at. And I'm just gonna mention one or two. It says here, how to be a better ally to women at state. Who are your mentees and proteges? Are you actively encouraging women? Do you make assumptions about experience? Is your office truly flexible? This is really, it's an excellent document. Again, I encourage all of you to take a look at it. And, I don't know if we can post this on the chat group or send it to the participants later on, but this is a very, very good piece of information here. Over to you, Cassandra.
Thank you very much. That would be wonderful to share. And I agree with you. And I know many of you out there, like myself, are also a mother of sons. And I think that's one really critical piece, whether you're engaging people in the workplace or at your own home, is finding ways for men to also be supportive of women and to look for ways to do things that might challenge themselves, as the theme implies. We're going to kick things over to our next panelist, Ambassador Elder from the Office of the Inspector General. I'd like to welcome her and have her share a little bit about her background and career path and journey to self-empowerment. Ambassador Elder.
Thank you, Cassandra. It's an honor to be here with everyone here today, these outstanding women in foreign affairs. I think probably our bios are out there, but I would add that I grew up in Kentucky. I was the first in my family to complete a degree in college. To pay for that education, I did all manner of jobs, radio host, one Ambassador Cantor, worked in a factory doing really demanding work, learned the value of hard work. Everything from that to being a dorm mom and a dental assistant, but all of these jobs really taught me the value of hard work. And I think there's no substitute for hard work when you're talking about your progression and challenging yourself, whatever your path may have been. But it also, I think, teaches you those kinds of jobs before you start your professional track. I think also show you how to relate to people. And that's an essential skill, no matter what path you take forward, particularly in foreign affairs. When I started in government, I too started at another agency. I was at the Department of Commerce in the International Trade Administration working on NAFTA, which was a great introduction to the government, where I had some terrific mentors. After about 6 months, I was an unpaid intern to begin with. And after about 6 months, my mentor announced she was going on maternity leave in the middle of NAFTA negotiations. And she quietly suggested to our boss that I slip in her role for the duration for about 6 months, going into, I think, about 9 months at that point. I was very terrified of doing this, but it was a great experience. And I was so grateful for her at the time to give me that opportunity. And I've carried that with me. Never underestimate your interns, and always explore, what everybody on your team can contribute to the end goal. And once I converted as a presidential management fellow into the State Department, I was in civil service the first decade. So I think part of my journey has been civil service and foreign service, like Ambassador Cantor. And I think seeing the value and understanding the value in both And then as you progress through, I've worked in regional bureaus, the Africa Bureau, EUR, NEA, both overseas and domestically, and then in the Ops Center, Economic Bureau. I'm a public diplomacy officer by Cone, and I was in the IIP Bureau as well, and currently the senior diplomat in the Office of the Inspector General. But I think, then you sit in everything, again, from unpaid intern to chief of mission. But I think when you get then around that country team table, when you've had the opportunity to work for other agencies, you immediately understand the value that everybody brings, particularly to an overseas mission, and how critical that is in being able to pursue whatever the goal is, the unique contributions of each of the agencies that are represented at the mission there. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to ask you one follow-on question with your experiences, both in civil service, foreign service, and other agencies. What do you do when you need to connect with others, when you want to kind of reboot either with other women like yourself or other folks that help you stay energized?
I think, you do, particularly those on the call who've been chief of mission, will probably echo this, but it's a very different role than in a lot of other places. And it's really important to have people that you can connect with. You have to be extraordinarily circumspect at post of what you may say, obviously in respect for everyone at your mission, but you may need to talk things through, or you're encountering something for the first time. I was fortunate that I had some friends that were currently serving as chiefs of mission in other postings, and was able to reach out on a regular basis and just touch base and ask how it was going for them, and run some things by them as well. And very grateful for that network. And happy to have helped them, at various points as well. It's really important, I think, particularly in that role, which can be a little isolating in that respect.
Great, thank you very much. And before I turn it over to our third panelist, just a reminder, if you have questions, you can feel free to share them in the chat, and we will be happy to take those shortly. So it's my pleasure to introduce our third panelist, Ambassador Rebecca Gonzalez, the U.S. Ambassador to Lesotho. If you could please share a little bit about your background and your career path and your journey to self-empowerment.
Thank you so much, Cassandra, and a happy International Women's Day to everyone, and a big thank you to the Office of Civil Rights, you, Amanda, Angela, and Cassandra, and all the participants here. So I too, like my fellow panelists, I've worked as a civil servant and as a foreign service officer. My entire career has been in the State Department, almost 36 years. And I started off as a GS3 clerk typist. I had a number of civil service positions in the Bureau of Administration and Diplomatic Security, the Bureau of Diplomatic Security, and I used to work on FOIA. And then in 1992, I joined the Foreign Service as a management code officer. I've served in Latin America, Near East, Africa, several tours in the department, including the Bureau of Administration, the Office of the Undersecretary for Management, and NEA. And then I became ambassador to the Kingdom of Lesotho in February 2018. I presented my credentials to King Letsie III. And I must say, it's been a tremendous privilege to work with such an outstanding team here in Lesotho. We have gotten preliminary data indicates that we have reached HIV/AIDS epidemic control in the middle of a pandemic. Lesotho had the second highest HIV/AIDS prevalence rate in the world. And so there's been a tremendous progress on this, as well as we've worked on building democracy and combating trafficking in persons and other things. I wanted to, the path to empowerment. I think a couple of things. You need to be strategic. You have to be incredibly flexible. Carmen mentioned grit, resilience, that as well. And something that you mentioned, Cassandra, and that's introspection. I think you have to be incredibly honestly introspective. And at the beginning, Angela spoke about choose to challenge and being responsible for your thoughts and your actions. And I think that we have to always keep that at the fore. And I think, you have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to put yourself out there. You have to, as a supervisor, as a peer, and as a friend, encourage your fellow female officers to put themselves out there. And don't ever let anyone tell you that it's not possible, because of course, people in my career have told me it's not possible. And it's interesting because when I'm in the department, I'll walk down 23rd Street in Washington, D.C., and I remember precisely what part of a sidewalk and what street I was on 35 years later, where somebody told me I couldn't do it. And so I think we need to realize too that to be positive and to focus on the positive, and don't let anyone tell you that it's not possible. I think that you can't let setbacks define you. See if there's a lesson to it, and look introspectively and say, what happened? I've had jobs, I didn't get a job I wanted. One time I was working in a converted closet. That turned to be like a career. It was like a momentous time in my career, and here I was kind of working in a broom closet. So don't just be flexible and do your best, and don't let setbacks define you. I think one of the things with leadership is holding yourself accountable and others accountable. And that is difficult. And I was talking to a colleague, you have to, work to be honest with yourself, and it's not easy. And as a mentor and as a mentee, don't set yourself up so you're in an echo chamber and people are telling you what you want to hear or what is easy. I think you have to hold yourself accountable, and ask your mentors to hold yourself accountable and listen to them. Don't hear them, listen to them. And sometimes it's hard, and sometimes you'll have to think about it. Sometimes I even write it down. What are they really trying to say to me here? Because I think we owe it to one another to be honest and to hold one another accountable. That is what I think helps you as you progress in the Foreign Service or in the civil service or any job you may have. I think we also have to, one final comment is we need to take a more holistic view of what our skills are, and not just strictly define them as to what they are in the office. What is life throwing at you? Do you have an elderly parent? Are you raising a child? Are you struggling with an issue yourself? Are you in between raising children and elderly parents who are sick? All of that brings about who you are. And I don't think we can divide work and personal life. It all melts together. And I think we as women need to give ourselves credit for all the things that we do inside and outside the office. Thank you, Cassandra.
Thank you. Important points. And I think that's something that we all struggle with to find that balance. One follow-up question, since you've spent all of your career at the State Department, what do you still hope to see? What kind of change in the State Department for women would you like to see us work on systematically?
So I wrote down a couple of things about this. First of all, I have to say, I am struck by department employees, their commitment to service, their passion, their intelligence, their technical knowledge. And I think when I was talking to a colleague, she said one thing that I think we really need to think about, and it's that we should train every person as a leader from day one. Let's not wait. Yes, I think it's very important for us to have these leadership skills, at the entry level, at the mid-level, senior threshold, and you're causing this. But I think we don't have the luxury of waiting until you're a certain grade. Because in one way or another, all of us will lead. And so I think that's important. I think the State Department needs more flexibility in rounding out our skill sets, whether it's civil service and foreign service employees who can get different experiences and not worry about that next promotion or meeting that next or how am I going to, get to another job. And I just wanted to say two other things. Is one that, I hear a lot of talk about mid-level conversion programs. And one of the things that when we were discussing this at Post is sometimes it's easier if we were to have conversion programs at a lower level, because number one, it may be easier for employees coming into the State Department to assimilate. And there's the financial component as well. Maybe at the mid-level version, when you're at the mid-level, you've got to worry about tuition, you've got to worry about, obligations. And so I wanted to flag that. And then finally, what I've seen is a number of people that are being put, women that I've talked to who have said, I was put on a short list, but I think it's window dressing. And so how do we give our up and coming officers, men, women, people from all backgrounds, civil service, foreign service, how do we prepare them and give them the skills and the honest feedback that they need so that they're prepared to succeed, not only at the highest levels, but as they're rising through the ranks? Thank you.
Thank you. Really important comments. Ambassador Cantor or Ambassador Elder, would either of you like to also comment on any further change you'd like to see within the State Department? Ambassador Cantor?
Yeah, thank you, Cassandra, and thank you, Rebecca, for those points. I was thinking about that question. What changes would I like to see in the State Department? And I thought about, I would love to see a State Department where the civil service, the foreign service, the LES and contractors, they all treat each other, with respect and they feel valued. Too often we hear, oh, this person is foreign service, or it's just civil service or LES. We all have contributions to make and we all support each other. And I really would love to see all of us working together and just, forgetting the labels. We have one mission. I also would like to see a department that encourages and accepts divergent opinions and ideas. A department where people can feel free to express their opinions without, fearing retribution. And last but not least, I would like to see a department that really, really represents the diversity of the U.S. We, when we are especially abroad, it is very critical that the world sees and understands that Americans do not have, one standard look or sound. You can hear me, I have, you can hear, I have an accent, and English is not my first language. And I actually can say that people in Micronesia value, my contributions because I have an accent and because, English is not my first language. Again, our ranks need to be, fair and accessible for all Americans. And, we really need to work on that. One last point that I would like to make is, changes that I would like to see. I would like to see our interns be paid. We have an excellent program, unpaid internships for many, many years. I used to be a recruiter, many, many years ago when I began my career in the State Department in 2001. And I remember how, 10,000 students applied for internships and they knew that they were applying to internships where they weren't going to get any money. But if we really want to diversify our department, not everybody can afford, going to Washington, D.C. or going overseas to do an internship. So I hope that, this is something that we work in the near future and we correct. Thank you.
I agree that that's an excellent idea, and also about really reducing labels and how damaging that can be. And I'd also like to add in our eligible family member employees. Nothing makes me cringe more than when someone says, well, I'm just an EFM, or like you said, I'm just a local employee. I think we all, as we strive towards making sure that we're honoring and respecting, I think it's also stopping that behavior when we hear it or see it. Both as a collective, but also to the individual that's saying it, to kind of boost them up and let them know that's not how we see them. We see them as a valued contributor. Ambassador Elder, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I think those are excellent, excellent points. And I think also one thing I think about, I see numbers sort of women in particularly positions of ambassador. Those numbers have improved gender parity over time. But sometimes I'm concerned about the pipeline. And if the focus is really on the end result, without as much focus along the way on the pipeline, are we giving women, but also other underrepresented minorities, opportunities, experience at these critical junctures along the way so that they can be successful? It's sad sometimes to see when somebody is in that position without having had those experiences. I would have been a far less effective chief of mission without those kinds of experiences along the way, starting with, deputy office director, the kind of management skills that you've got to exercise on up through, all the steps when you're a career person to be a chief of mission. So are we carefully choosing, with keeping in mind that we are building those leaders of tomorrow, even at those earlier stages, so that they can be equipped for success? And one thing I would like to see is a little bit more exchange, perhaps, within the foreign services. There isn't just the State Department. We've got, of course, USAID and the Foreign Agricultural Service and the Foreign Commercial Service. A little bit more opportunities, maybe even domestically, so we understand the organizational culture. Why not have an economic officer have a tour at FCS, this sort of thing, even in a limited way, so there's greater appreciation for the different cultures that we come from, but that we then bring together. And then finally, I was thinking about today as International Women's Day, what we're really marking is the 1919 anniversary of the women's right to vote. It's sad that it took 42 years of men debating this in Congress before it passed. But in the celebration of that important milestone, I think people realized that it didn't give all women the right to vote. There were many, many, many African American, Native American, Asian, Latin American women who still could not vote because there were, obstacles, particularly at the state level, where there's still citizenship issues, literacy issues, financial requirements that could not be met. And, as we celebrate progress, and many of us here have had terrific opportunities, it's always important to stop and look over your shoulder and see, who is left behind. Because with any great leap forward, there are usually those who are left behind. And it's really our responsibility to acknowledge that and to keep fighting for that, as those women did over time. And we're still fighting those battles. We've seen recently, renewed efforts at the state levels that could inhibit people's ability to vote and exercise that very fundamental right. So as we celebrate, today, and we think about change and celebrate change, that we're never done. It's always a work in progress, and to always stop and look over your shoulder and see what can you do to help bring others along, whether it's women now in the department, LGBTQI, whatever it is. There are those who are still left behind, women and others, that we need to reach out a hand and help lift them up and carry them forward with us.
Thank you. Super important points. And I think you're absolutely right. As we look back at our past, it's really valuing the work that has been done and what work is left to do, but also, I think also honoring that we are still growing and learning. Our democracy is still, in a lot of ways, in infancy stages in many categories. And I think that that's something that listening the last few years has really come to light for us to choose to challenge, to have those difficult conversations and how to do things. As you mentioned, sharing that value of where others are coming from and what do they need at those mid-levels to be successful. So along those lines, I want to find out, Ambassador Cantor, I already asked you, but Ambassador Gonzalez or Ambassador Elder, How do you advocate for other women? What have been some successful things that you have done or would like to do in the coming years to help, especially in those critical entry-level, mid-level groups to reach opportunities that might set them up for later service at the senior levels? Professor Gonzalez?
Yes, thank you, Cassandra. I think one of the things that I try to do is to give officers a chance to do things that they are not necessarily comfortable doing. For example, somebody may not have a background in public diplomacy, and so, or they're uncomfortable speaking in public, or they don't have strong, they feel like they don't have strong managerial skills. Just sort of create an environment where people can try different skills and make them understand or try to convey that it's okay to make mistakes. Because I think with some of the officers that I work with who are so brilliant and who are so talented, and I wish I had 1/100th of their skills and abilities, it always has to be perfect. And it just, it's just, that's really hard. So creating that safe environment and so that, and giving people the opportunity to do things that they would normally not do, so that they can learn and grow and struggle a little bit if that means that that leads to personal growth. Because as I mentioned earlier, I think that we have an obligation for those who want to, and I think that's something also, not everyone, some people are happy doing a certain job and don't necessarily want to go, and do a certain, go all the way up the career ladder or whatever it may be. So working with people to see what are they interested in? What at this point, what do they want to do? What are their goals? What are their aspirations? Creating an environment where it's safe for them and to recognize and help them realize that perfection is not attainable and making mistakes is okay. And so that they can have that rounded skill set that I was talking about earlier. So when they are at that position, at that level, they're going for that job, they have the exposure. Over. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador Elder, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've done particularly at posts is when new people arrive, you always have an orientation discussion with them and ask them honestly, what is one skill you'd really like to hone during your tour here? And oftentimes people talk about public speaking, sometimes editing and writing. And that's really useful because then you can help create opportunities throughout their tour. And you've opened, a channel to give that direct and honest feedback because they've identified that as an area. And you can have a kind of a safe zone, where you can then after, let's say they do a public speaking opportunity, if you have the chance, or also maybe your DCM or others in the mission, to listen to it and to sit down together and talk about the parts, of that were really compelling, or go over and let them practice it, with you. Take your time. I find that's always time, very well spent and much appreciated. And I would say as women go forward and seek other opportunities and may seek 360 references, don't just go for the person, with the highest title. Go for the person who can speak most directly to your experiences and your qualifications and how you worked really hard and took initiative and accomplished things. Sometimes I think people think that the title alone, but it may have been 20 years since you've worked with that person and you haven't really been in contact. It's far less effective than someone who really worked with you hand in glove on something. So really think about, and equip that person who's advocating for you, particularly if it has been a little bit of time, for how they can be successful in advocating for you. Really help them understand the job that you're going for. highlight and remind them of things that you did which align with that. That really helps those who are advocating to hit the mark. I think sometimes the 360 system that the department has for inputting references, I understand, you have to kind of automate these things to handle the volume. But in some cases, I lament that it is that way, because I would advocate differently for individuals I know well for some jobs versus others. And the system doesn't really take that as much into account. So sometimes I prefer, rather than just putting a generic endorsement in the system, of writing maybe one very targeted email to the job that they want most, that really can speak more directly to how their skills line up with those job requirements. So, think strategically about how you use your advocates. How you may have a different coalition of advocates for one job versus another job. Keep in touch with them and tailor it to the job at hand.
Thank you. That's really important advice. And I like the fact that each of you talk about finding that special attribute about the person, either that you're helping them develop that strength or opportunity, or help them develop something that they've identified as a weakness, or helping them achieve that next job. We have a few questions now in the chat. I thought we'd take a few, and I'll open this up to any of you that would like to answer. The first question is very much about what you were talking about in terms of opportunity and how to support someone. One of the attendees has mentioned that they've been asked to lead a disability action group, asked to lead a group, but they don't feel like they have the leadership training necessary. What would you say to this individual to help encourage them in this new role? Ambassador Cantor?
Sometimes we doubt ourselves. Sometimes we have not had the opportunity to receive the training. But I find that many times we just second guess our skills and abilities. If you have not had the opportunity to get the leadership training that you think you need to obtain or have to do the job, we are unfortunately living in this era of a pandemic where you cannot go to leadership training at FSI. But there are so many things that you can do, yourself. You can, read articles about leadership. You can talk to others about leadership. You can conduct interviews, people in your office or others that you admire as leaders. You can ask them questions, about how would you handle this? You can talk to your mentors. You can also, again, going back to the point that I was making about, doubting your abilities and feeling that, you don't have what it takes to do the job. There's something that I learned recently. It's called Imposter Syndrome. There was someone in my office who shared an article that was published in the Harvard Business Review about 3 weeks ago. And actually the title is Stop Telling Women They Have Imposter Syndrome. I finally found, the illness that I've had for many, many years, which is precisely, doubting my abilities and feeling that, I did not accomplish enough to be where I am. And I'm sharing this with the group because I encourage you to look up, Google that article. It was super, super insightful and gave me, a boost of confidence. So going back to the person who asked the question, try to assess whether you really don't have those skills or whether you think that you don't have them. And if you think that you don't have them, seek ways to learn about, the jobs and how you can do it. But ask yourself if you are just second guessing yourself and it's just a matter of, just doing it. There was one job many years ago when I became the executive director of the Bureau of Counterterrorism. When I was offered the job, I was so scared because I felt that I did not know enough in the counterterrorism world to be the executive director. And I have to tell you that after I took the job, I've always been self-driven and I like to accomplish things and I meet my goals. it was the best job, one of the best jobs in my career. And I still remember how scared and afraid I was, but I do remember taking that leap of faith and just doing it. So I would encourage you to, again, think about it, read that article that I just mentioned, and just go for it. If you think that you are ready, you probably are. Thank you.
Thank you. That's super good advice. Sarah, I might need your help on an earlier question. They're disappearing from the chat, but I can tell you one of the ones that I see at the moment, which is probably a challenge for many of us, is if any of you would like to speak about balancing your career while also raising young children. Ambassador Elder or Gonzalez? Cantor?
As I said earlier, I think that you have to look at, give yourself more credit. And we talked about imposter syndrome. Ambassador Cantor talked about that. So just a quick comment about mentorship. Look more broadly at your mentorship. It doesn't necessarily have to be somebody who has a higher position. Peers, I have great mentors who are peers. My colleagues at this embassy and others that I've served with over the last years are my mentors. So really look at that network. And I read something where it said that women were very good at networking, but not being strategic and leveraging those networks. So that kind of resonated with me. So I want to make a comment about that. As I said, I think that having a family and raising children, as I said earlier, all those skills that you have that you're using, whether it's to help your child with your homework or to take care of a child who is sick or to deal with an elderly parent, those are all leadership skills. And those are all coping and managerial skills. So I say that, it's hard, it's a balance. Sometimes, you have a sick child and you can't go to the meeting and you have to ask somebody else to cover for you. But I think that they're incredibly successful employees who are able to balance family and career. And I think you can do it. I did it.
I think that also, there are times if, you've got a span of a career and certain jobs will demand different things of you. And some are, more standard. You can talk to people who've held these jobs before and they may be more standard working hours. Others may not be. And it may be, you don't want all of one or all of the other. At different times in your life, choose what you know. If it's a period where you've got a lot to juggle at home, choose one that has a job that has a more standard sort of working hours. But I agree with Rebecca that these skills of time management, of triaging, of prioritizing work that you have to do every day, particularly when you have young children, are really essential in the workplace. And I see that, in people who are doing it. I think there is greater understanding and flexibility now in terms of understanding people will just have periods where, where they've got to focus a little bit more on that. And, but they're hardworking colleagues. And, they're there for you when you need it. So I think the foreign service overseas, I think is a little bit better about this of kind of surging and one colleague picking up for the other when they've got to disappear, for home leave or R&R for a while, or family issues come up. I think we could work a little bit more on that domestically. I've seen it a little bit less so, within the department. But we're all humans, and if you're not able to juggle those areas of your life effectively, then you probably can't perform at your best in the workplace. And so as managers, you have to keep that in mind and demonstrate support and flexibility where you can. And in my case, I had my step kids were a little bit older, but I've had to be separated from my family not ideal as well. And whatever you can do as a manager to help people to, support their family and to balance those responsibilities, I think you'll have employees that are more whole and more effective.
I just wanted to add one thing, Christine. Also, I think that with the pandemic and with the social distancing and with all the work that we've been able to do at home, I think that shows that we can be more flexible. And so, you have your children at home, you're working, maybe you're doing it simultaneously, maybe you've carved out time. But I think that this last year has shown us what we can do. And people have been incredibly effective in teleworking in spite of all kinds of challenges. So let that be a ray of hope and something that we can build upon, especially for those employees who have to juggle children and work. Thank you.
I agree with both Rebecca and Christine, and I would like to add that I think it's important to have a very good line of communication with your supervisor when it comes to managing your personal life and work. I have 3 daughters, and I have to tell you that I did not miss any soccer games. I had at one point I had a daughter in elementary school, another one in middle school, and the other one in high school. And let me tell you, they were all Girl Scouts and they were playing soccer. And between my husband and I, we managed to, organize ourselves, but I also managed to, I had good relationships with my supervisors, and they knew that, when I was in the office, I was giving 200%. But when it was 4 o'clock, 4:30, I had to go because I had to pick up my kids and take them to soccer practice. And of course, I will go to soccer practice and I will have my BlackBerry at the time and I will review, check my emails, but I was there present for them. So again, I agree with everything that, both Christina and Rebecca have said. But I think it's very important that you have that communication with the supervisor and that they support you. If you are in an environment where your supervisor is not supportive, I think you need to think about whether you should stay in that, position.
Great, super important. I really appreciate those thoughts, and along those same lines, recognizing my colleagues like myself are also breadwinners in the family and are trying to support whether you're a single parent or whether you're a parent of a non-working spouse, or for whatever reason the spouse has put their career on hold, and recognizing and supporting each other in all those different roles while still finding those important boundaries, as you mentioned, Ambassador Cantor, what works for you and your family, while still hitting the career goals that you're hoping for. And I think for each person, I try and remind them of this, especially in human resources, meeting a lot of folks that are facing being parents for the first time, or with elderly parents that they're trying to determine what to do. As several of the ambassadors said, what's important to you at different stages in your life and different stages in your career will take the lead. That's a wonderful thing about the State Department. There's not one perfect way to formulate your career. There's many different ways, and juggling that and finding that and being okay with that and not apologizing that you chose one job over another because that worked for you and your family and your goals. It might not look like what your neighbor chose or what your A100 colleague chose or what people are telling you to do, but because it was right for you and for finding that balance. We have a couple other questions in the chat, and one is, how do you suggest that newer women employees seek out mentorship when the chain of supervision in their office is not supportive of advancement and key opportunities? For example, like briefings to the DASs or ambassadors. Does anyone want to take on that question?
Yes, I would like to say, if you're not getting, the mentorship from your chain, there are other ways where you can obtain mentorship. There are the employee affinity groups. We have a number of groups in the department, and some of them have their own mentoring programs. The department also has a mentoring program. It's an umbrella program that covers both foreign service and civil service. And, perhaps you should sign up and, try it and see if that works for you. But, sometimes people think that mentors are only people that are in your chain, and that has not been the case for me. I have mentors throughout the department and outside the department. So consider, looking for potential mentorships, in other places in the department, because I can assure you, you will find mentors in other places.
Yeah, very important. Another colleague has asked, what are your thoughts on male allyship? In courageous conversations we've had with women leaders in our bureau, we've learned that being a woman, of all the intersection of their identities, was the one factor that male counterparts explicitly challenged. In addition to women using diplomatic skills to navigate these situations, what role do you see in male allyship? Ambassador Elder, do you want to take a stab at that one?
Well, I think it's essential. Obviously, we can't live in a bubble, here, and our male colleagues are quite capable and essential for our own success as well. And I think, in enlisting them, working with them, in many cases supporting them and asking, how can you support them in have more career conversations with them as well. And I think, to be honest, there are times that males may feel that they're not getting the attention, they're not having discussions like this. And I think showing that as an individual, you care, it's more likely, that you're going to have male allies as well. And I think, it's about supporting each other. And there are so many people in positions, male colleagues in positions of authority in our organizations, and again, who have valuable experience for us to learn from. I think making sure that we don't close ourselves off to those relationships and those mentors as well.
Thank you. Either Ambassador Gonzalez or Ambassador Cantor, anything to add?
Yes, I would like to add that, I mentioned before that it's very important that, we educate men. I agree with Christine, this is vital, they are crucial, we shouldn't be just looking at women to, support us and, help us. But I think that if we encourage them also, the theme today is choose to challenge. This is the theme for International Women's Day. If we encourage them to choose to challenge, to call out those gender biases and inequalities when they see it, I think it will be, it will send a very, very strong message. I want to share one example with all of you. Several years ago, I attended a training session sponsored by the Department of Defense. And while we were discussing some, cases, I provided some input, some ideas on what I thought we needed to do. And right after I finished, a man, another person from the intelligence community, repeated exactly what I just had said just a minute ago. And of course, I'm there, I'm like, here we go again, why? I mean, that's exactly what I said. Well, to my surprise, one of the men in our little group of 6 or 7 people said, hey, Joe, that's what Carmen just said. Exactly what you said. And I have to tell you, you don't know how refreshing that was to me, that, he called him out there. And again, if we can help our, male colleagues, understand and encourage them to choose to challenge, to call those, call out those inequalities, I think it will be really, really, important and successful.
Thank you. That's a super important story. And a few of those examples were also given last week by women of color who are in Department of State or national security positions. And a few of them mentioned specifically when they have so appreciated allyship from many different directions. But then also encouragement on what are we doing for senior leadership positions and lifting up, for example, a diverse group of folks on shortlists. And I think, as was mentioned before by one of you, not simply putting women or women of color on a short list just for the sake of building that list, but to actually advocate for folks and to be able to say, I really want a group of people that is diverse, that represents the US, but also that brings in different opinions and different viewpoints, whether it comes from another agency or whether it comes from another cone than what I've been looking for in the past. I'll never forget an ambassador I served for, a male ambassador, who said, I'm really tired of sitting at country team and looking at a bunch of white men. And how can I change that? How can I do that? And he was confiding in that he needed resources to be able to lift up and get those short lists. And every time he had a short list brought to him that did not include a woman or a person of color, he sent the short list back. And that was not just sections within state, but also our other agency counterparts. He knew he couldn't tell those agencies who to send out overseas, but he could ask that they be thoughtful in their consideration of who they're choosing to lead an extremely large mission, and to encourage those voices. Hopefully we have more leaders doing that. And that, I thought, was a great example of allyship and lifting us up. I'm afraid we're almost out of time. I don't see any more new questions in the chat, but there have been some postings of the affinity groups, as well as the article that Ambassador Cantor had shared earlier. And so I would just like to ask if any of the ambassadors have any final words before we close the session today. Ambassador Elder?
This weekend I was reading a biography of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, sort of in getting my mind in the right place. Someone I think who fought for equality overall, not just for women, and was such a pioneer in her field. And one quote that I ran across, stays with me, and that is, as women achieve positions of power, the barriers will fall. And as society sees what women can do, and as other women see what women will do and can do, there will be more women out there, and that will be for the betterment of us all. And that just encourages me and inspires me to keep going and to keep reaching back, as many of us have said, and helping those earlier in their journey, because the journey is never over, and the battle is never won, but we keep marching on. Thank you so much.
Okay, with that wonderful quote, I'll turn it over to Angela to close us out.
Thank you for joining us for this event today and for taking the time. We really enjoyed your comments and your reflection and your heart. To the audience, please consider supporting EAG and EWS. This is the Executive Women at State. Also, we have a federal women's program at posts internationally, which are wonderful ways for you to become allies for women throughout the Department of State. Also, please support our other office, the Global Women's International, GWI. This is Global Women of Courage, our International Women of Courage at State. They are the first Dr. Jill Biden won the award. And you can look at www.state.gov, and that will be live. So again, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. This recording will be sent out in department notices within the next couple of weeks. Thank you. Thank you, Cassandra Hamblin, and to all the ambassadors. We really appreciate your time. To each ambassador, we really do appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.